We are live on StreamYard. I'll wait till you to pop on. All right, we got this thing working. It's on. Not sure what was going on with StreamYard, but we are on, and my guest is on as well too. I hope you all are in for a amazing show to learn more about how to provide some access and growth for our students. Particularly today, we're going to be talking about first generation students. And so for those of you that don't know me and don't know about this podcast, this is Student Access 101, where we discuss critical conversations in pursuit of equitable education for those students that are underrepresented. And today we have an amazing guest on. This is someone that I met about a year ago while working for Harvard had invited me to come and do a panel. And this lady, she was also on the panel. Both of us have very similar interests. We both are true advocates for students and first generation individuals. And so it is my pleasure to be able to add in the guests. And here we go. Okay.
We did it. We're here together.
Yes, absolutely. Thank goodness. Oh my goodness. So we're going to jump right on in. And as we continue to celebrate Women's History Month, so we're on the tail end of Women's History Month, it was only right that I bring on another woman this month for the podcast. And I wanted to highlight this amazing lady. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Anh LyJordan. Anh, thank you so much for being with us. And I'm just glad that you took some time out of your schedule to spend here with us and to enlighten us and to hopefully, empower us so that we can be better advocates for our students.
I'm excited to be here to have this conversation with you again.
Yes, absolutely. And so I'm going to read your bio just so that everybody knows how fantastic you are. Anh is a recovering, and I like how you say that, recovering. Anh is a recovering trial attorney who has recently transitioned from her life in the federal government in DC area to a life as a social entrepreneur in Raleigh, North Carolina. What a change. Through her organization, Accelerate the Climb, she assists first-generation college students to bridge the gap from college to career. Besides her work creating a network to give first-generation college students the mentoring, connections, and resources to achieve professional success, On is also a state-certified mediator who serves as a consultant and mediator on labor and employment issues. She has a book coming out in May. It's entitled Legally Overcoming Workplace Trauma, a playbook for employees who want to conquer harassment, discrimination, and bullying at work. Oh my goodness. So many people are going to benefit from hearing from you because underrepresented folks, all of us have had some kind of experience with this. So I can't wait to hear your story. And besides work, On loves eating anything served from white tablecloths to food trucks, watching anything that streams as long as there's more than one season, and being a chauffeur to her 2 teenage sons with all their activities, as well as cuddling with her black lab, Wilbur. Student Access 101, it's my pleasure to introduce you to On LyJordan.
It's nice to be here. I'm excited to talk about what's going on in the world of first-gen college students.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And your bio is quite modest. You've done quite a lot with your career. And can you just tell the audience a little bit more about you and what was it like for you growing up? And how did you, come to the decision that you are in now with, serving young people and, to make that transition?
Yeah, sure. Well, one of the things that I realized is my journey has been long, and in a way it looks like it's all been planned out for me, but really it was just one step at a time. And for me, my journey started when my family came over here as refugees from Vietnam in 1975 when Saigon fell. And so I'm having real emotional connection and empathy for the Ukrainian people right now and what they're all going through. But we were very fortunate. We came over here and we were sponsored by a family in Lansing, Michigan. And I would say, if I were to describe my life, one of the things I would say is it's been a series of very fortunate events. Ones that I have taken advantage of, ones that I have worked hard, but there's also been a lot of luck and fortune involved in it.
Wow.
And the first one was being able to make it out of our country. And number 2 was landing with a family here in America who treated us like family. So I ended up growing up with 3 sides of my family: my dad's side, my mom's side, and my American family. And
very nice.
Yeah. So we started out in Lansing, Michigan. And from Lansing, my dad was lucky enough. He ended up, after my parents both did their own turns in sweatshops, working in America. My dad ended up landing in a great job with General Motors, which meant that it was steady work once he ended up getting enough seniority, health insurance, pension, a lot of things that a lot of people in our situation didn't end up with when they came to work. And so that really led us on a whole nother path. My dad got transferred to a plant in Buffalo, New York, which is how a Vietnamese family ends up in Lansing, New York. I don't know. But we ended up there. And from there, I went to college at Cornell University with a degree in labor relations, industrial labor relations.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting that you chose that major.
I could tell you, I got into it for a lot of very practical reasons. My dad was a union guy, so I understood that. Cornell, I don't know if you know this, but it's a university it's a private university with 7 schools underneath it, some private, some public. And so the School of Industrial Labor Relations was actually founded as a land grant school. So the tuition there was an Ivy League education with a public school tuition, which makes a difference in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
And that has been part of my fortune and my luck to end up in New York, to be able to be part of that program. And from there, I moved on to my professional career.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the work that your company, Accelerate the Climb, the work that you've been doing, can you talk a little bit about how you've been able to provide access and resources to first generation students?
Sure. It's a great, you know, talking about Cornell, they are, I would say they're the most egalitarian of all the Ivy
Mm,
League schools because
mm,
of the land grant school component of it. I went to a lot of
yeah.
school with a lot of kids from rural parts of New York or from the city in New York City that otherwise would not have had access to an Ivy League
Wow.
education, honestly. So I think that was a little bit part of the ethos of what was created inside of me, understanding the discrepancy and how important it was, how your degree can make a difference, but also how your access can make such a difference. And one of my best friends, actually still my best friend now, my best friend from my freshman year, she is a Cornell legacy lady. So
Okay.
so I was very fortunate to have a foot in both doors, understanding where I came from with what kind of connections and assistance that my parents were able to give me, which they did everything that they could. They got me there. But my mom's idea of networking, she was a seamstress. She had her own alteration shop. So
Uh-huh.
her idea of networking when I was growing up was I would come home from school, get off the bus, walk through the shop, and my mom would be like, "On, come in here. Dr. Archer is in here, and he wants to tell you about what you need to do in order to get into medical school. Or so and so is here. He's a lawyer, and he's going to talk to you about what good law schools were." That was her networking. That was
Yeah, yeah.
her access, right? That was the social capital that she had.
Yes, yes.
Fast forward to me arriving at Cornell with my friend Julie's family, and they had all graduated from Cornell. Her sisters and her
Mm,
brother-in-laws had graduated from there. She was there, and I would hear her on calls with her dad at night, like, what
mm.
should I do? Her dad would give her advice. This is what I need. They'd send her, you know, study supplies or money to buy books or stuff like that. And I was like, oh, that's great. Can you ask your dad this for me? Can you ask your mom this for me? And they helped me, and they ended up treating me like their fourth daughter. And
Oh,
I ended up being able to have all the connections and access uh, that a family like that has that my family would not have had. And that is also one of my like
yeah.
series of fortunate events. They ended up helping me with internships, helping me with getting jobs afterwards. And that's one of the things that tweaked in my mind. I thought, you know
Mm,
what? That is the difference. I'm not any smarter or harder working or anything like that. I am who I am.
wow.
That has been the difference. How can I do it for other
The
students?
connections have been the difference. Yeah.
Connections have been the
Yeah.
difference. Mhm.
Wow.
So with Accelerate the Climb, when I ended up starting off working with kids one-on-one, just trying to lead by example and let them know, give them any assistance I could. But it ended up, one of the things you'll get from me, Dr. Tameka, is I always end up, my husband says this, it's just never enough, is it? You always want a little bit more. And I was like, I can work one-on-one with people till I die, but that's only going to be a limited number of people.
Right.
How can I make it bigger? What do I want to focus on? And so
Yeah.
that's when I decided to create something that was going to really focus on the things that I think are the intangibles that you don't get with a degree, which
Yeah.
is, or don't assume that you get, the mentoring and networking when you bridge the gap
Absolutely.
from college to career. So that's what I've been doing with Accelerate the Climb, working on building an alumni network for first generation college students.
Yes, absolutely. We have some people on. Some of my friends are on. What's up, Gunter man? I'm so happy that you are on and love this. He says, thank you on Esquire.
Recovering though.
And so prior to the first generation students coming into the workforce, what are some skills and some knowledge that you believe they need? Because both you and I were first gen students, and I know for sure there was a lot of things about going into the workforce that I did not know,
Yeah.
that I was not prepared for. And so, with the work that you've been doing, what type of skills have you been able to give, or what do you advise students have so that they can be better prepared for stepping out, transitioning from college into their career?
Well, I think for me, the number one thing is just like your attitude, right?
Mm, yeah,
Because I'm going to believe that each of these students that I'm talking to, they're smart enough, they're going to be able to work hard enough, but that's still not going to be an even playing field for them. So
right.
the number one thing I talk to my students that I mentor is, hey, reality check. Life
Yeah,
is not a meritocracy. That's what people
absolutely.
try to make you believe. But if you
Yeah.
believe that, your soul is going to get crushed because it's
Wow.
not reality. It's not how it works. So you need to learn how to not just work hard, but also understand how to work smart. And
Mm.
that's a difference. If you go in just thinking all I have to do is work hard and my time will come, it's not the 50s and you're not a white man at IBM. Okay.
Woo!
So
Woo!
you need to think better. You need to think smarter. And so that goes to my second thing, which is networking, mentoring and
Mm.
networking. You know, like I told you about my mom, she did what she could, but that is a difference between her and my friend Julie's family. They were
Yeah,
the ones that
yeah.
were able to say, I said, you know what? I was in Big Law in New York City. And I remember talking to her dad and saying, like, I think I really want to go work at the Department of Labor and do like just purely labor and employment law for the government so I can feel good about it. Next thing I know, I was on a Acela down to DC from New York City, talking
Wow.
to somebody pretty high up at the Department of Labor to give me the lay of the land.
Wow.
Who do I need to know? What do I need to highlight? Who do I want to interview with? What divisions do I want to work in? That is priceless, having that kind of access and that kind of
Oh,
information.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
It made me a better candidate technically, but it definitely made me a more attractive candidate when it came time. And guess what?
Mm.
I got a job,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Right,
So
right.
mentoring and networking, no pure meritocracy. And then I think the last thing I would say is this is a thing that it's very hard to unlearn. And I talk about this with my mentors and I try to
Mm.
lead by it and fill up my Zoom screen with them. But I
Yeah.
say to them, don't be afraid to take up space. Believe that you belong
Ooh,
and believe that you are
ooh.
entitled to this because you know what?
Wow.
The people who are getting it, they're getting it because they believe that they're entitled to it. They ask for the things
Mm.
that people want to give them. They want to give you things. But if you don't ask for it, guess what? People are out looking for themselves. They're doing their own thing. They don't
Mm.
know Dr. Tameka wants to spend an
Right.
hour over coffee. If she asks, they would say yes. But she
Yeah.
never asks, she's not going to get it. The people who are
Mm.
getting it are the ones that say, yeah, my parents paid tuition for me to go to college here. And guess what? I'm going to get all my time with every professor.
Yeah, yeah,
Get it
yeah.
because they feel entitled to it. You need to believe that you belong there. You need to
Wow.
believe that you're entitled to it. And that
Wow.
translates to when they go to work, right? When you go to
Yes.
start working, there's a lot of in first gen communities, fake it till you make it. Don't let anybody know that you don't belong. Lay low, just work hard, right?
Oh,
Back to that
yeah.
meritocracy, lay low. And instead, what ends up happening is it happened to me time and time again, even when I was a lawyer. At that point, I'd been out of college for over 10 years, and I would
Mm.
still fall into this trap as a lawyer. Like, okay, okay. I'd walk back to my office and be like, I don't think I really understand what that partner just asked me to do. And so I'm either
Mm.
going to screw up, I'm going to waste
Yeah.
time, or what?
Right.
That's no good. What if I had taken that one extra minute to be like, can you just make sure and you clarify that you want this or that?
Mhm.
I didn't feel entitled to do that, but
Ooh.
I should have. But I should have.
Wow.
Most people do. They didn't have any
Wow.
problem with that. And guess what? They delivered the product they were supposed to. And I
Yeah.
did it. Who did that hurt? Me.
Yeah.
But that's a common thing. There's a lot of imposter syndrome that happens with first gen students. They don't
Absolutely.
feel like they belong here, so they don't want to ask the questions that in their mind confirms that they don't belong there. But in my
Absolutely.
mind, I've been through this long enough. All I know is if I'm their manager, I want to make sure, Dr. Tameka, you understand what I need? Because I need
Right.
it by Friday and I need you to get it done right. And if
Right.
you ask me a good clarifying question and I can get you on track to give me the right thing, I love that. That's good. I want to make
Absolutely.
sure you and I are communicating properly, right? That's not a
Absolutely.
thing against you. That's
Oh
good.
gosh. I'm really happy that that is actually something that I learned very early on in my career. Since my background is in fashion, one of the things that was taught to us in the very beginning is that you always have to ask questions because if you don't and you screw up on something, you could cost the company millions of dollars.
Mm,
And so they told us that from the very beginning. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And so I've never, like, within my career, been afraid to ask questions. But again, I'm fortunate that I
yeah.
was able to learn that early on. Yes, yes. Absolutely. Wow. One of the things that I find so fascinating about you and your story is that you demonstrated this courage, um, that a lot of people never do get a chance to demonstrate. So you transitioned from being a lawyer, you were getting paid at a wonderful, practice, I'm sure. And you left that so that you can follow your passion and serve first gen students. And can you talk a little bit about what was the decision making behind that? And what kind of courage do you feel like you needed in order to be able to do that?
Well, first I need to address your courage thing. It's very
Yes.
sweet of you and very nice, but I do want to acknowledge the fact that it really was a step-by-step progression that,
Mhm.
like, I tell my students all the time is just you need to listen to yourself. You need to learn to trust
Mhm.
yourself. At the end
Yeah.
of the day, you need to trust yourself. That's rule number one. Because every step of the way for me, I was battling two things. One,
Mm.
my urge to fulfill my parents' American dream.
Ah,
I
yes,
made a
yes,
lot of
yes.
steps that were fine and valid steps that I really wanted to act in service of what it was that would make our journey worth it, right? So
Yeah.
I go to an Ivy League school. I went to work for a Fortune 500 company.
Yeah.
I went to work for a big law firm. I was a lawyer now. I bought a house on a cul-de-sac. I was a PTA president. Like, I did all the things. And every step of the way, though, if you look, every step of the way, I also had the second thing that was the tension, which is what do I
Mm.
really want to do? And how do I
Mm.
take my obligation of what I want to do, what I do versus what I want to do? So
Wow,
I
wow,
started my
wow.
first job at Nabisco and I was doing labor relations there, which is what my degree is in. And I made a great salary. I mean, honestly, I remember the day when my dad was like, "You are in your 20s making more money than I'll ever make in my life." And I thought, I'm doing it. Like,
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I'm doing it. But then I did not. I was like, you know what? I really want to go to law school. And everyone's like,
What?
you're like getting promoted every year. You're making a lot of money. You're about to get stock options. What are you talking about? I was like, I think that's what I want to do. So that's what I did. I went to law school. I ended up getting a job in big law in New York City. And everyone's like, now you're living the dream. And I was like, I'm
Mm.
living someone else's dream. This is not what I want. So
Mm.
then I left big law in New York City and took, I don't know, like almost a 50% paid cut, to be honest with you, to go work for the Department of Labor. And I thought to myself, hey, you know what? Now I'll feel good. I'm going to still be able to be a lawyer. I'll make a very healthy salary, good, secure job, and I'm going to be doing work for the American workers.
Yeah.
That's going to be good enough for me. And then it just wasn't anymore. And
Wow.
then I started thinking, like, well, what do I really want to do? Who do I really want to be? And I'll tell you, my greatest impetus was having kids. I have a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old now, and we moved down here 5 years ago. So they were 11 and 8. And
Okay.
I realized I wanted to be who I was telling them they could be.
Wow, that's deep.
Yeah. And I
That's
wanted to
deep.
lead by example. I couldn't do that and ask that of them and not actually do it for myself, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Brave, have courage. Okay, so maybe there is some courage there. Be brave, have courage, follow your heart. You have one life. Who do you want to be in this world? How
Yeah.
do you want to leave it behind, right? And so I did a lot of self exploration and I realized like the first gen piece of it was so defining for me,
Yeah.
and it's so defining for me. And also, again, so fraught with, but for the fact that we had that family that sponsored us when we came over from, my grandfather was an engineer for Ford. He was a great role model for me of being a professional. He was a real champion of my education and my striving for success, right? But for meeting Julie's family and all the connections that they gave me and all the opportunities that created for me to rise to the occasion and
Yeah.
really achieve and fulfill. They're my achievements, but they definitely paved the path for me. But
Mm.
for that, how am I any different than any of these students who might not have been as lucky to have that
Wow.
one extra thing? What can I do? I can do something to give back. I can take my fortune and share it. And that's what I decided to do. That's why we moved to Raleigh, because you can't afford to do that in Bethesda. The nonprofit part of nonprofit is true.
Right.
So that's how we ended up down here.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And thank goodness, your husband was on board and was very supportive of everything that you did, because that makes a huge, huge difference. It
Oh,
really, really
absolutely.
does. It makes a huge difference. Wow. And so your upcoming book, it's Legally Overcoming Workplace Trauma, a playbook for employees who want to conquer harassment, discrimination, and bullying at work. And so from this title, it sounds like this is some personal experiences that you've had. And do you care to discuss and advise how can others that are listening move beyond workplace trauma?
Yeah. Well, so this is, like I just mentioned, the nonprofit part of nonprofit is real.
Yeah.
And so I ended up doing some consulting, HR consulting on the side
Okay.
while I was doing my first gen work, because I really wanted to just purely work on advocacy there and not worry about monetizing or anything like
Yeah.
that. And so in doing this, I'll tell you, this book is born out of personal, professional, and educational experience.
Yeah.
I've spent 25 years as an Asian woman in a predominantly male dominated labor relations, employment law type profession.
Yeah.
And I've also spent 15 years as a labor and employment attorney working on cases where people are discriminated against, whether it was when I was at Big Law defending corporations for a few years or when I was at the Department of Labor representing American workers, right? And I learned firsthand, this is sad but true news, it is really hard to go up against the man. If you are one person who is a victim of workplace discrimination or harassment or anything like that, it is very hard for you to go up against the advantages that a big company has. And when I thought about it, I thought, the best defense and maybe the only defense that an employee has is to educate and empower themselves. And so that's what I've strived to do. This book is our company that we created is called Exit Wisdom. And the idea is to share our wisdom with how you can choose the exit that you want, right?
Wow.
You don't have to feel the victim when you choose to leave. How do you do it in a way that makes you feel like you're moving forward stronger and better, right? And so when I was my partner that I wrote this book with, her name's Brandy, and she was one of my clients that I was consulting with. And she is a smart, tough, Black female executive under the umbrella of HR. And at the conclusion of me helping her transition from one terrible workplace into another better job now, she said to me, "I don't want to stop working with you." And I said, "Well, you should want to start working with me because I'm really only helping you through this trauma that you experienced in the workplace." She goes, No. I mean, I want to keep working with you so that you can help other people the way that you helped me. She said,
Wow.
I'm educated. I'm working under the umbrella of HR, and I learned things from talking to you that I didn't even know. You made me feel better about my choices. You educated me about what my options were.
Right.
So how to move forward and protect myself proactively in my new job. And she goes, we need to do this in a way that you're not doing it just one-on-one with people, but in a way that we can give more people access. So that's why we wrote this book. And this book is really to educate people about their rights. If I could give you a couple of just takeaways that I would love for people just to know, and they can explore it more on their own. But in the book, what we try to do is educate people on their rights. We talk about the importance of documentation, how it's not only
absolutely
just it's evidence for you. That is your superpower, evidence.
Absolutely.
And I think equally important thing, because every case, every issue that you have is not going forward to court. But what the evidence will do, it will empower you and validate your feelings and your experience. Because so many people that experience workplace discrimination and harassment, they get gaslit by their supervisors, by their friends and family. And what you can do is, if you have this validates what you already know. It is just clear documentation to say, look, this is real, and it will help you in your healing, and it'll help you in moving forward and make you feel stronger, right? I think the other thing that I talk about all the time with workers is just the importance of allyship, and whether that's you going out and seeking people to be your allies, affirmatively seeking people to be your allies, to speak up for you, to validate you,
absolutely,
to protect you. But also, on the other hand, what's easier than asking people to be your ally? It's easier to be someone else's ally.
Woo! Yes.
To be their hero. It's easier for you to be the one that you see Dr. Tameka sitting over there in the corner, and someone's doing something they shouldn't. It's hard for her. It is. That's just the reality. It's hard for her to say, excuse me, you're making me feel. You can help her.
Yes.
You can interject and say, I think Tameka's already made her point clear. She answered your question 2 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
You know why you don't have an answer? Because you keep interrupting her.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
You being an ally is just as powerful. And so if you can learn from this book or from whatever and learn to stand up for other people, that's just as valuable. Everyone's not going to be a manager, but you all are coworkers. What kind of coworker are you going to be to each other? Right?
Wow. That's deep. One thing that I have realized, being a professional, is that oftentimes people of color, when things are going on, they don't speak up.
Mm-hmm.
They're too afraid to speak up. They don't want to lose their job.
Mm-hmm.
And that ally that you were talking about, I was always the ally for my colleagues.
Yeah.
I was the one who would just never shut up about what was happening.
Yeah.
And it
Same
was,
here, girl. That's why we're friends.
I know, right? And I'm just like, it makes me so aggravated when I see something happening and people don't speak up.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to tell you this one little thing, and then I'm going to get back to you because it's connected. So on my way out of Kent State, so I just transitioned from being assistant dean at Kent State University, where I was making six figures. I transitioned from that so that I can start my business, First Generation Revolutionary, so that I can work with and empower first gen students, right? So before I left, it was very important for me to help Kent State University find another Black professor, because I'm actually the very first Black professor ever in the School of Fashion Design, the first and only. And then when I left to go to the dean's office, they didn't have one for 2 years. They didn't have another Black professor for 2 years. And so before I left, it was my mission to try to help find someone, right? Well, a friend of mine from Cornell, a good friend of mine, she is an amazing scholar, and Kent State University would have been lucky to have her. Well, she went through the interviewing process and they treated her so poorly, she decided to pull her application. I was pissed off.
Good for
her. Right.
Good for her.
Right. She had every right to do that. But I was pissed.
Mm-hmm.
I was pissed off because, first off, I'm bringing you somebody that can help elevate the program, first of all, because she's an amazing scholar. I'm bringing somebody to help elevate. I'm going to help you fulfill the what you need in regards to diversity, because you don't have it right now. I'm going to help you do that. And you can't even, do what you need to do so that you can accept this person in and make her feel welcome. Right. So she told me what happened. And I immediately went over to HR and to try to file a complaint against what was going on. Well, HR told me, well, we can't file your complaint unless your friend makes a statement. So I called my friend up. I said, this is what's happening. I'm about to file a complaint because something needs to happen, but they won't let me do it unless you make a statement.
Mm.
And unfortunately, because of how academia and other professional spaces work, where they make people of color afraid to speak up,
mm-hmm. Yep.
She didn't write the statement.
Yeah.
And so therefore I couldn't file the complaint.
Yeah. Mm.
I was heartbroken.
This is a story that is just like all the other ones that has led me to write this book, right? Because there is a way, when something like that happens, it really is demoralizing, and it kind of makes you feel, as a pioneer, you're like, what was it all for if it's all going to just go back to what it was?
Mm-hmm.
But I will say your intuition was right in that what you wanted to do was formalize and document and hold them accountable.
Right.
Even if you were on your way out, that's one of the things we talk about, is just like, you can still make a difference in leaving. When you're
absolutely,
you can still make a difference. So that was the right, intent on your end. But I understand on her end too. We talk about like how people, depending on the industry, depending on the region that you're in, maybe you don't have geographic mobility. Maybe you are just stuck in Tuscaloosa. Well, if you're stuck in Tuscaloosa, well, you can't burn any bridges because there's only so many places to go.
Oh my goodness. I thank God that I didn't have that experience, because I'm telling you, I am the kind of person that never will will back down. I'm like, no way. If there's something going on, people need to know about it, And I just have such a hard time with when people are too afraid to speak up for themselves.
Mhm.
If you can't speak up for other people, at least speak up for yourself, you know?
Well, but
But
I would offer that I think it's actually easier to speak up for other people. And once that happens, the impact that that can have also is that maybe that was the first time that that happened for her, right? But the more that that happens of people standing up for you and you believing that when you put your voice out there, you won't be alone, that you
yeah,
won't be just standing out in the middle of the field like, I'm the only one with a problem? Nobody
right,
else sees this? That's a really scary proposition. And that's one of the things that's the important part of allyship, of the more people that you can get behind you, supporting you, not only can it help push you towards saying something, doing something, but it
right,
also helps actually make a broader impact because it's
right.
not just a lone voice.
Yeah.
And it's not just a self-interested lone voice.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. And that's something that's hard when we get into that trap, being people of color. They often think that it's just self-serving, a
Mhm,
lot of the complaints that we make.
mhm.
And so I want to ask you, as a Vietnamese woman, the workplace trauma that you face, was that at all connected?
You know, I have reflected on this a lot, and I'll be honest with you, especially, I won't even lie, just even in the last 5 years that I've started doing this work for other students. You got to help yourself before you can help
Yeah,
others.
yeah.
And, I reflected on the early part of my life, which I grew up in like very white Michigan, very white Buffalo. And then I'm going off into labor relations where I was the only person under 45. I was 22. I was a woman, I was Asian. I really had all the strikes against me, right? And I would go out and negotiate these contracts in the middle of nowhere with all these old white guys who are like,
Mm,
maybe I was the first Asian. I was Chinese to everybody, even though
I'm
I'm
sure.
Vietnamese.
I'm sure.
But at least it wasn't a slur. And I learned, and I look back, I reflect back on it. I had a defense coping survival mechanism of just like blending in, right? So
Mm,
in my labor relations days, you would not, I barely recognized myself.
wow.
I was playing golf, smoking cigars, drinking tequila, playing cards, shooting guns. I was doing whatever it was to be one of the boys. Not
Wow.
even, I was like one of the boys. Like we would go
Wow.
out and I would be in the cigar lounge with them, smoking a cigar, guzzling down tequila. Like what?
Wow.
I was jumping. I was the one that was going to beat you to the punch and make that self-deprecating joke about me, about being Asian, right? About whatever, because it hurt less to do it to myself than to let somebody else say it. Let me beat you to the punch. Let me cut first. Let me cut myself instead of you cutting me,
Ooh.
right? And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't even consciously doing it. I was just trying to survive. I was trying to fit in. And how do you fit in? Right. And I mean, it wasn't until I went to law school that I started then having more of a reassessment of like, who am I?
Yeah.
And is there value in being who I am
Yeah.
versus just purely assimilating and losing myself?
Wow.
Can I achieve and be somebody without having to be somebody that I'm not?
Wow.
That was really hard. That was really deep. So
That is
that's
deep.
yeah, that's when I went into like understanding the power of allyship and understanding and connecting with people and identity and building community, right? The power of the collective, which I should have
Yeah.
known because I studied labor relations and unions, the
Yeah.
collective, how powerful that can be. And I'll say my evolution from that has then moved now from not just pure acknowledgement and recognition of who I am, but pride in who I am.
Yeah.
And that has now turned into really understanding that there is a power and there is a strength in being who I am because I'm showing up in the same places as you all. But I had
Yeah.
to go through a lot more to get here.
And that whole thing about deserving that you talked about just a few minutes ago is so important. You realize that
Yes.
you deserved to be in that space.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think now the stage that I'm in is in really understanding how important storytelling and celebration
Mm,
is in this, and how important it is for role models that look like
yeah.
me, for
Yes.
kids to see it, role models that look like
Yes.
you, that can have a
Yes.
doctor in front of your name, right?
Yes. Yes.
That
Yeah.
how the power of, like, what's happening right now with the Supreme Court nomination, the power of our vice president right now, right? How important it is for a dream to be seen, not
Yeah.
just dreamt, but actually seen and believed that it can be accomplished. And so
Right.
I'll tell you a funny story of that. So that's kind of where I am right now. Who knows where I'll be next, my next contribution. But I was at the there's a first gen conference that they have for students, and it's called like IVG. And I
Oh
was
yeah, I've heard of
at,
IBG.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I was
Yeah.
at it
Yeah.
literally, girl, I was hugging and kissing like 300 people 2 weeks before the pandemic shut the world down. But so it was the last time I was out with humanity, and I was giving a keynote and blah, 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 and I was just whatever. And at the end, people were coming up and asking questions and talking to me and whatever. And this young Asian man came up to me and he was like, "Thank you so much. You know, I'm an
Mm,
engineer and I'm just used to dealing with other engineers. And if I ever see any Asian women, they're always very quiet and very, I've never
mhm.
heard such a loud and funny Asian woman before in my life." And I thought, boy, you need to get out more. We're everywhere.
Right. Right.
But I thought that it's important that he saw that, as
Yeah.
that's also a version of Asian women that he's never seen before. And I
Yeah.
know he's not the only one. I know every time when I was at the Department of Labor, I spent a lot of time in Appalachia. So I'd be rolling out to
Yeah.
the hills of West Virginia and
Yeah.
Southwestern Virginia, and people are like, "Oh, government lawyer," and they're like, "Oh, female government lawyer. Oh, Asian government lawyer." And I'm like, and I'm also not exactly what you expect, folks.
Right. Right.
So yeah, but I have learned how important it is. And now that I have kids and I have a young niece who I just am like, I need you to see more people that look
Mhm.
like you, that do everything that anybody can do, so that you
Yeah.
can believe that all of that's available to you as well.
Wow. Yeah. It's like when you see an example, it's easier to follow.
Exactly.
I went both routes. I had amazing mentors in my life. And then I had a little bit of defiance in me, should I say, because of because of the fact that my background is in fashion. Ever since I was a little kid, I never wanted to be like anyone.
Mm,
I never wanted to fit in. I was never that girl that wanted to fit in. And so I always had this individualistic kind of mentality about myself and who I was. So one thing that was bothering me was the imposter syndrome. That was what held on to me. I was still okay being myself, but I was under the impression that other people were watching me and waiting for me to fail.
mhm,
And that's what got me.
mhm.
And once I was able to get over that, then my career started, just blossoming. But again, it was that what you were talking about, that whole idea of knowing and deserving, that you belong in that space.
Yeah.
A lot of young people, a lot of first gen students from low income backgrounds, we have a hard time understanding that we deserve to be in certain spaces.
I mean, I still feel that way sometimes.
Mm, honey, you better go in there and own that space. I'm telling you.
It is my truth, but it's okay because you can work on it and you can still show
Yes.
up, and then
Yes.
you get yourself ready and, you know, be the star that you are. But
Yes.
the reality is sometimes I still have to talk myself into,
Hmm.
you do belong there. People do
I
want to hear what you have
understand.
to say or whatever it
I
is.
I totally understand. Wow. And so you just had a new partnership with Flip National,
Yes.
right? So for those of you that don't understand what Flip National is, we're not talking about like gymnastics flipping,
No.
but we're talking about Flip National. They are the first generation low income partnership, and they do a lot of work for students that are first gen. And so On just partnered up with them, and it's called CoFlan or
CoFlan,
CoFlan?
yeah.
CoFlan. Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So, I started Accelerate the Climb on my own, just with my heart and a mission and really no plan, to be honest with you. I was like just trying to be the little engine, and I was trying to make as much of a difference as possible, really focusing on mentoring and networking.
Mm,
And so I chugged along like that for a year. And then I ended up at the IVG conference. I met Chris
okay.
Sinclair, who's the executive director of
Yeah.
Flip. And he and I got to talking one night, and we talked late into the night because we were so excited because we realized our missions were so aligned.
Yeah.
And actually, they were a perfect fit because Flip National has, I think it's around 30 or so chapters around the country on
Yeah.
campuses where they support first generation student organizations.
Yeah.
And so I was talking to him about my dream for creating an alumni organization in the
Yeah.
same vein. And we decided to partner up. And so,
Yeah.
because it's a natural partnership, it's a natural pipeline of every student is going to become an alumni. So if we can get them there, we can have them here, and then we'll naturally work together. And that's what we've
Yeah.
done. We created CoFlan, which is a collaboration of first gen low income alumni networks around the country. And we've got some of the more established alumni networks, first gen alumni networks at Stanford and Harvard and Yale and whatnot. So those groups are part of our collaborative. And then we have some newer ones too, Holy Cross, UVA, Duke.
Okay.
So the 8 of us, I guess I'd say, have been working together for the last year in sharing best practices with each other and kind of creating a mission for how do we move forward in terms of helping other first gen alumni networks.
Yeah.
One, folks that either want to start one or people who have started one, but really we don't want them to reinvent the wheel. Let's not make it better. Let's do what legacy networks do, which is share resources, lift as you rise, right?
Yeah.
And so what we're doing right now is starting to put together resources to help other first gen alumni networks, with my ultimate goal being that we'll end up having, so many alumni networks that we can actually work as one umbrella organization so that you don't have to be affiliated with any school. Because right now you just heard me.
Yeah.
Those kids, they need a first gen alumni network. They need their identity to be
That would be awesome.
Right?
But that would be awesome.
At Stanford and at Harvard, you know what? They're going to be okay. But who I really want to access and touch is taking all of this learning and creating a network so that students at community colleges who are first, at public schools, at smaller schools, at more rural schools, that they have access to this network of first gen alumni that they wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah.
Because you know what? One of the things I realized when I was trying to reflect on what I wanted to do is I have been very lucky. And I have had a lot of mentors in my past, in my career. You know what? Usually they're like old white people that went to Bucknell, and really their advice was not really advice for me. Because it didn't fit me to do the things that they did or anything like that. What I needed was someone with relevant experience who understood where I came from, where I was going, and how hard it was to get there. I needed someone to cheerlead me in a way that meant something to me, who I felt that they had walked in the same steps, so I could put my feet in there too, following behind them because they got me, right? And so that's why I think the importance of having a first gen alumni network is very different from just getting a mentor from your school or from your work or someone who's really nice and wants to take you out to coffee and talk about their career for 20 minutes straight.
Wow. Well, we're going to have to connect again. And I would love to learn about how I could possibly even be involved with that as well. So yeah. So I'm excited about that. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you might like to discuss?
I mean, I think we hit a lot of it, right?
Yes.
I'm also currently right now I'm working for the North Carolina Pro Bono Resource Center.
Okay.
As another, because I always joke that I'm a Gen Xer in a with a millennial spirit. So I've got like all of my little side hustles going on. But I'm working there on some projects I feel really passionate about. They really are striving to get equal access to justice for all North Carolina residents. The project I'm working on is a housing stability project to work on eviction diversion and help people with rental assistance. specifically right now through COVID, but who knows, maybe we'll be able to do something more because housing, I don't know about where you are, but housing in North Carolina and the Triangle specifically where I am is crazy right now.
It's expensive now.
People with six-figure income jobs are having a hard time finding a house to live in. So I'm working on that as well. So if people are interested in that, they can hit me up on that also.
Okay.
But
and
yeah.
How do we like have everybody get in touch with you? How can people reach you?
Yeah, so Exit Wisdom, which is where the book is being published out of. You can check us out at exitwisdom.com. And then CoFlan is actually under the Flip National umbrella. So if you go to flipnational.org, you can find CoFlan there and click on our website and connect to us there. And then you can just connect with me at Accelerate the Climb.
Yes. And my sister's on Instagram and she's on LinkedIn, right? So can people connect with you there too? Okay. All right. All right. It was wonderful to talk to you and to see you.
Yeah.
I'm so happy we had a chance to talk, and thank you, for agreeing to do this with me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what comes for you. And I love the two of us thriving together and making a difference in this world. I'm glad to be a sister in change with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Have a good night on.
You. All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye. So this is the part of the presentation or the part of the podcast where I talk a little bit about some of the research that goes into when I'm doing my episodes. I'm a researcher, and I believe that it's really important that we not only discuss the topics, but also provide a resource that people can go to learn more about it. I'm an educator. That's what I do. I'm a researcher. That's what I do. I can't help myself. I always have to provide a resource that people can use. And so, according to the research, National Association of Colleges and Employers in 2016 stated that there are 50% of students that are college students are first gen. And because there's such a big number, that's part of the reason why I really wanted to get into this work, is because there's so many students that need the services and that can definitely use the resources that I'm providing. And so according to this research, and you can see it scrolling on the bottom down there, Career Aspirations and the First Generation Student, Unraveling the Layers of Social Cognitive Career Theory. And so in this particular research, they talked about the fact that first gen students report lower family income, which there's a lot of first gen students that come from low income backgrounds, and less family support, while having more financial dependence, putting strains on their family dynamics. And so that's something that institutions that are working with first gen students, something that they really should look at is trying to, like how a lot of schools say, or a lot of school districts will say, that they want to educate the whole child. Well, if you're working with first gen students, you need to educate and provide resources for the whole student, because there's so many different intersectionalities to people's positions in life, particularly race, sex, economic status, family life, whatever's going on. I mean, some people, they just have very, very unique situations that they have a need for. And one of the things that the research also talked about was that students from low income backgrounds have a lower self-efficacy regarding college. Basically, what that means is that they have a difficult time seeing how they can be successful. When you come from a low income background, oftentimes you really don't know how to fit in. You don't know, you can't see it for yourself. Like me and An were talking about, you don't know whether or not you're going to be able to be successful. You can't see it for yourself. You have that imposter syndrome. And so the research also talked about how students that from different places in the United States, because the First Gen Networks TRIO programs, they're a national organization, and students that are Appalachian students that are first gen are going to have very different needs than, say, our Mexican students that are first gen living in Los Angeles. So universities, institutions that are supporting these students, one of the things that I recommend is that you try your best to tailor your programming, tailor your resources to the needs of the students. And so this particular episode of Student Access 101 is brought to you by the first generation student manual that I wrote a couple years ago. It's been doing very, very well. It's called Be the GOAT, Career Readiness Manual for First Generation Students and Young Professionals. This is a book that really helps to build students up in regards to like getting them prepared for the work environment and getting them ready so that they'll be able to compete with their colleagues. As a student graduating from college and going out into the workforce. So not only was I first generation from college, but I'm also first generation from high school. I'm a high school first generation. My mom and dad both, neither one of them have a degree from or a high school diploma, but then also first generation from the university, and then first generation to be someone in a corporate space. So when you're new to that, there's so much that you don't know. And so that book, Be the Go, is a resource that young people can use so that they can be better prepared when it's time for them to step into their workforce. And so I would like to thank you all for listening today. I hope you enjoyed my guest on LyJordan. She's an amazing, amazing woman. And if you liked this podcast and enjoyed it, please leave a like and a comment on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, and share it with those people in your circle who you believe will benefit. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is Student Access 101, the podcast. And together we can do this. Let's remember that we should empower, educate, because there's no success without student access. Thank you, everybody. Have an amazing night.